Eric Michael Lloyd. I just wanted to read some things from this book that was kind of interesting. Talk Like Ted. It's from Carmine Gallo. Just wanted to read one short story from it. This one's called, as well as some research updates on the COVID virus and then some personal thoughts on it as well. This one's called Stories Plant Ideas and Emotions into Listeners' Brains. Into a listener's brain. In a darkened conference room in the campus of Princeton University, someone is watching a Charlie Chaplin movie to give the rest of us a deeper insight into how the brain processes information. Yuri Hassan, assistant professor of psychology at Princeton, is the psychologist conducting the experiment for the Princeton Neuroscience Institute. Hassan's experiments include activities such as watching movies or listening to stories while his subjects are connected to an fMRI machine to study their brainwaves. Hassan wants to learn how the brain processes complex information. Hassan and his colleagues have discovered that personal stories actually cause the brains of both storyteller and listener to sync up. Sync up is my term, Hassan calls it. It's a brain-to-brain coupling. Hassan and his colleagues recorded the brain activity of a speaker telling unrehearsed stories. Next, they measured the brain activity of the person listening to the story and asked the listener to fill out a detailed questionnaire to measure comprehension. The results are among the first of their kind in the area of neuroscience. The researchers found that the speakers and listeners' brains are responsive. This was actually a mind meld between the speaker and the listener. Hassan chose a graduate student to be the speaker. Lauren Silbert told a personal story about going to her prom. Researchers scanned her brain and the brains of 11 students who were listening. The same parts of everyone's brain showed activation, meaning a deep connection between the person doing the talking and the person doing the listening. It is also suggested that everyone in the room, all the listeners, was experiencing a similar response. The coupling, quote unquote, did not occur when the listeners were told a story in Russian, a language that they did not know. When the woman spoke English, the volunteers understood her story and their brains synchronized. When she had activity in her insula, the region in the brain responsible for emotion, the listeners did too. When her frontal cortex lit up, so did theirs. By simply telling a story, the woman could plant ideas, thoughts, and emotions into the listener's brains, reports Hassan. Researchers have discovered that our brains are more active when we hear stories. A wordy PowerPoint slide with bullet points activates language processing centers of the brain, where we turn words into meaning. Stories do much more, using the whole brain and activating language, sensory, visual, and motor areas. Hassan's findings are profoundly important for anyone who needs to deliver a presentation with the intent of influencing behavior. If stories trigger brain-to-brain coupling, quote unquote, then part of the solution to winning people over to your argument is to tell more stories. That's, once again, from TED Talks. It's a book from TED Talks. Most people do like TED Talks. This is Talk Like Ted by Carmine Gallo, Wall Street Journal bestseller. I just wanted to speak on that, read that as a start, and then kind of segue into something a little more pertinent to what's going on with the coronavirus. I came across some good advice on CNN from a psychiatrist called Dr. Christine Moutier. She was on CNN several days ago, and she gave advice about how to cope with anxiety and stress related to social distancing. There was also a five-time Olympic gold medalist, winning swimmer, Katie Ledecky, and she also had advice on how to stay active on self-quarantine. Um, Basically, what Dr. Moutier was discussing had to do with a little bit of emotional intelligence, um, which is the ability to recognize, label, and successfully manage one's own emotions and those of others in one's life. When we think about IQ or maybe Gardner's multiple intelligences, this one would be uh, an intelligence of a different valence. This would be emotional intelligence, which is one of the newer constructs uh, uh, that I forgot which Stanford professor was speaking about, but it is pretty interesting. And they say that many leaders in the future will have that emotional intelligence ability as well, as some writers write about. Um, to get more into what Dr. Christine Moutier was speaking about, this was basically mental health advice for coping during the coronavirus. Um, I kind of wrote out a little acronym. It was SEN CAL. Probably could come up with a better one, but SEN is SEN and CAL is CAL. Uh, S is for sleep. Sleep is important for mental health. Exercise of any kind, push-ups, sit-ups, crunches, yoga. I did the other day. My grandmother, nutrition-based and type of heavy protein diet. Uh, Everyone has to go with what works for them. I try to eat a lot of vegetables and fruits, more of a Mediterranean diet, with about a fist of meat in every meal, or maybe a little bit more. Stay away from the red meat as much as I can. A lot of fish, a lot of chicken, and things like that. Veggie burgers and things like that. So Sen, we have sleep, exercise, nutrition, and then cow. Um, Connectedness during this time is important because, as we know, all humans need to connect. No person was born on an island nor lives on an island by themselves. um, Even Castaway had some difficulties, right? Uh, that is Mel Gibson in the movie Castaway. So seeking connectedness, maybe through FaceTime and things like that, keeping an appropriate distance and keeping clean as well. Um, Also, maybe showing warmth and things like that as well. Receiving warmth, sending warmth, uh, altruism, things like that. Communication. These are all forms of connectedness. I know some people are giving classes online. Professors, teachers, students, yoga instructors, dance professionals, and the like are all connecting online now. As we approach uh, Good Friday and Easter Sunday, and um, um, this is what was termed as Holy Week. Um, a lot of religions hold many things uh, during this time, and doing that responsibly is definitely important. Um, Listening to authorities about keeping distances and not gathering in areas so as not to spread the virus that spreads very easily between people who don't look like they have any symptoms or have no symptoms at all. The next one is A of the cow, avoiding sensationalizing influences. So if something is too sensationalizing for you, or if it if it makes if it brings up too, if the emotions or sensations that arise from those influences are too much to handle at the moment, that would go back to that emotional intelligence and using some strategy to change what you're doing, listen to music, do some type of another activity uh, than that one. You know, changing the channel, reading a book, playing a video game, seeking out uh, advice or help from someone, or communicating, um, or um, just steering clear of those, and focusing on oneself would be another way. Meditating, yoga, deep tissue relaxation, things like that, to help regulate one's emotions and manage them appropriately as well. And the last one is limiting alcohol consumption, because as we know, alcohol can suppress the immune system, it can depress the immune system, and you want that strong now at this point, during the coronavirus spread and pandemic, so that you can fight any of these viruses, or um, any symptoms that you may experience off, so you don't have to be hospitalized and things like that. Same goes for, smoking or anything else that depresses the immune system, um, and all of these things you would want to, if you didn't know, uh, or had any questions, you'd want to consult your doctor. This is just advice from psychiatrist Dr. Christine Moutier, who was on CNN just the other day. So I wrote it out as SENCAL, SEN, sleep, exercise, nutrition, and CAL, connectedness, avoiding sensationalizing influences, and limited alcohol consumption during these times, or limiting, right? Whatever your set point is, and kind of reducing that just a little bit, um, for your own health. Uh, and the last one would be boundaries, keeping 6 feet, keeping boundaries, um, even in a psychological sense, things like that, or a professional sense as well. But 6 feet physically would be the most pertinent. Keeping 6 feet, staying at home, would stop the spread of the virus as best as possible. I think that is something that many people can do. I think that is something. Uh, I'm not going to say for myself that it was easy. I find ways to do push-ups and sit-ups and things here at the house, and keep myself busy cleaning and reading and writing and listening, and meditating, as well, um, or even doing yoga, and making sure I get enough sleep as well, and nutrition. So just keep that in mind. If you're feeling uh, any symptoms, or mental health symptoms, you want to make sure that you have your sleep, your exercise, and your nutrition, a sense of connectedness, some way or another. Obviously, keeping distance, staying home, things like that. There's free applications. There's FaceTime. There's cell phones. There's house phones, um, things like that, that anyone can connect with another person through. Um, and then there's a part of boundaries from, once again, Dr. Christine Moutier. She's a psychiatrist that was on CNN the other day. Was expectations, keeping a sense of expectations about maybe, just in some best worst case scenario, best possible outcome, uh, most striking possible scenario, worst case scenario, is good for one's prefrontal cortex. People want to know what's the best and what's the worst, keeping that in mind as well, and then obtaining that yourself, as the news has been putting out on, you know, just about every news channel, about what to expect, and how to prepare for that, and how to be safe. So that's another thing that you would want to keep in mind, to try to get some expectations if you feel uneasy about anything like that as well, or any anxiety, right? Obviously, all of these things you would, if they were uh, bothersome enough, you would contact, maybe um, telehealth, or a doctor, psychiatrist, therapist, um, that works with you or for you and with your health plan as well. And this is all just advice and for informational purposes only. Um, One thing about the expectations and the boundaries that the psychiatrist um, was suggesting as well is my take on it is that it can have an effect on quelling the comfortability with the unknown during a time of uncertainty, things like that. So people use spirituality, or one thing I can say is that um, I have a master's degree in clinical psychology, and one thing we first line uh, of defense, so to speak, I guess that's one way to say it, would be friends, family, and faith, right? Uh, would be something that we would use as a buffer to cope with any anxieties or depressions or everyday bothers, things like that, right? Anything that's bothering anyone at the moment. Um, Moving on to the next point, uh, um, people have been basically passing away, dying from these close gatherings because the virus spreads from anyone, no matter if they show symptoms or not. That's what asymptomatic means. Um, a very religious and spiritual and holy week with the holidays coming up, Good Friday and and many of the others as well. Maybe we could do this from home at 6 feet distance from one another, right? Keeping in mind the authorities, uh, not as a finger waving authority, but more as someone that you're looking up to uh, because they have the knowledge, they have the 411, they have whatever it is to make sure that we stay safe because people have been dying and they're trying to flatten that curve, especially in New York City and Los Angeles where they have it really, really bad. Um, so maybe if that's possible, pastors and faith leaders all across America can do these things from home. I mean, I saw something amazing from Joel Osteen the other day, and then my pastor um, shortly after that as well. And this was all from home. So um, perhaps that's possible as well, because that would be the best way um, so that it doesn't spread from expelling it out of the nose or the mouth or the mucous membrane into someone else's facial area or any open areas, sores or anything like that, to get inside their internal systems, bodily systems. Um, so basically, the virus moves through the air, and the last several hours um, without any wind effect, right? So there was a model that showed that basically, if you look at someone sneeze or something, you can kind of see with that model that it projects out, and then some of those molecules start settling to the bottom, towards the ground after some time. They don't stay there forever, just to keep an idea of it. Some places people can still walk their dog and go to the gym, and even still, or make go, exercise and things like that. But even still, people are keeping their distance in the places where they're being mindful of the law, the authorities, the medical professionals, and their strong suggestions. I mean, even the president and many countries as well that suggest that staying home. Uh, Basically, they're tiny particles that you do not want to get in anyone's eyes, nose, mouth, or any openings into theirs or your internal bodily and bloodstream or airway or mucous membrane, okay, which is the nose and mouth and things like that, right? The nose, pretty much. Um, I know Miami, Florida, walking dog, exercise, yoga, that's okay in Miami or Miami Beach. Exercising is okay, and then here, walking your dog, as according to WLRN, National Public Radio, as of 2 days ago, all 6 feet away though. Um, So let's hope that it stays that way, hopefully. But if not, I'll be doing this stuff from home, and taking my dog in the backyard so that do their thing and relieve themselves. Um, Especially if you have a big dog, you know. Um, uh, Imagine also one thing: the power of prayer for New Orleans, because they are being hit hard by this pandemic. Definitely love you all. I have friends from there, family. I'd say from there, and then I've been there myself at least once. So, any medical supplies, any PEP volunteers, medical professionals. Um, New Orleans is also being hit hard as well. Um, and just like the public humanitarian effort that was shown for New York City, New Orleans would need that help as well. Uh, on a side and related note, regarding the origin of this pandemic, the coronavirus, here's an article that talks about lead exposure from backyard chicken eggs, a public health risk. This is by Adrian C. Batista, Birgit Hush, and Robert H. Uh, Pachenda. Okay, and this is the Journal of Medical Toxicity, Volume 10, pages 311 through 315. And this came out in 2014. 14 citations, 342 accesses. I'm just going to read the abstract because it pertains to how I'm starting to think about food. Now, I've been thinking about food and where it comes from and if it's been tested. And how the coronavirus has been said to have spread, okay, in Wuhan, China. Okay, this one has to do with the United States, so I'll go ahead and speak about that. The abstract states, although the U.S. has made significant strides in reducing lead exposure, new and emerging sources are raising cause for public concern. Recent reports of finding lead in eggs from chickens raised in urban gardens has highlighted the need to consider the potential health risk of consuming eggs from backyard chickens. Following the detection of 0.33 milligrams per gram of lead in the edible portion of eggs submitted for lead analysis from a backyard chicken owner, further investigation was conducted to determine the source and extent of lead exposure in the flock. When they say investigation, they mean research is investigating things like that. Uh, Several birds, almost 2 dozen eggs, and environmental samples were submitted to the California Animal Health and Food and Safety Laboratory for further testing. Lead was detected in the blood, liver, kidney, and bone at varying concentrations in all birds, but was not detected in the muscle tissue. All eggshells contained detectable amounts of lead, while only a little over half of the edible portion of the eggs contained lead. The detected concentrations in the edible portion approached or exceeded the recommended threshold of lead consumption per day that should not be exceeded by young children if a child consumed one average sized egg. Peeling paint from a wooded structure adjacent to the flock's coop was the likely lead source, containing 3,700 micrograms per gram of lead. That's 3,700 micrograms per gram of lead. Thus, removal of the chickens from the source and periodic testing of eggs for lead were recommended. This case illustrates the need for consumers and healthcare workers to be aware of potential sources for lead exposure, such as backyard chickens. Um, that stood out to me because of how it was stated that this COVID 19 virus has spread basically from people in China and Wuhan, China doing the same or similar things. Um, Kind of starting up their own uh, uh, backyard chicken farms, turkey farms, or even serving cat and dog um, that was basically unclean or put in unclean containers, and then from there, uh, this thing spread. Um, so I think that there's a lot that we can do on our end as consumers to make sure that we check, maybe for an FDA sticker or asking many questions about what we put in or we ingest. Uh, I think that's pretty important as well. Um, uh, okay, so basically, as of yesterday, reports covering the COVID-19 virus state that investigators suspect that this virus may have come from bad food in China, in particular eating unregulated or unchecked animal meat from either unclean animals or their transport in unclean packages. From the images, it appears these animals were not from a farm or farmers that use sanitary means to keep, collect, or sell them. These animals range anywhere from the typical chicken or turkey, but perhaps even wild geese, ostrich, more certain, uh, dog, cat, whether. Um, I am personally, I am so glad that we do have the FDA here in the United States, and that many are doing what they can to slow this curve of the coronavirus. Uh, Such things that many are doing are washing hands, keeping 6 feet distance, and checking to assure we are eating sanitary foods. Also, staying home once again. Although it may not be easy at first, you know, we can. That's something that we can learn. Many celebrities are showing what we can do at home, and making things free and available for people to do. Companies are doing that as well, online, or perhaps even playing a board game, or reflecting, or finding your own creativity and talents as well, or capitalizing on that, or building on that, or multiplying those gifts, um, or just doing it intrinsically for fun. Uh, this was a courtesy of CNN, and basically the staples in the system that are still in operation during these tough times, such as UPS, uh, construction workers, um, supermarkets, um, places like that, even Walmart, even the companies that are making these PEP. uh, Okay. Not tangent, but on the other hand, Fox News also reported a magnificent and much awaited moment that certain individuals and companies were taking up the responsibility and humanitarian effort to distribute over 100,000 masks as of a couple of days ago. Today, there were reports, this was as of yesterday, I believe, that millions of masks were donated and distributed to those on the front lines in combating this COVID-19 virus, according to CNN as well, right? Thanks to the military that was handling that. Okay. On the same vein, China has likely provided the long awaited information for the United States to finally engage in a well informed decision making or educated decision making, um, as that's where the origin of this concern arose from. Okay. Um, that would be Wutan, China. Um, Putting this in perspective with a non judgmental attitude, especially during this zeitgeist or time, uh, or global and horrific situation, may be challenging, but I'm thankful for the ability to come together to share this information, data, and evidence based research or testing results worldwide to come up with a swift remedy to solve this problem. Remember, although uh, many do, uh, there are many very sad stories, but many people are surviving that are carriers of it or have contracted it as well because they're building up antibodies as well themselves. Many people are doing what they can to get tested. Many people are doing what they can to stay home, and many people are tough to get out as well. And also, the United States uh, is not last on the list for how they dealt with this problem. I believe they're not last on the list. I would say doing doing uh, doing pretty well. And I hate to say that in comparison to um, most countries. And then once we find out what works for us, then we can um, help other countries even more. Um, Pandemic, I did learn in Webster's occurs approximately every 100 years or so. Perhaps we can be well prepared as necessity beckons for any such God forbidden future occurrences. Let's get in the front of this thing, as has been stated, and completely flatten this curve, meaning beat the projections, the software models, although as optimistic as that sounds, and as terrifying as they are, 90,000 to 240,000 um, people will pass away. Either way, there are behaviors that we can engage in to do our very best. That's personally what I believe. Uh, Whoever thought that Roger Bannister would break the 4 minute mile? Whoever thought that we can beat these projection models? These are statistical models based on hundreds of thousands of bits of data and trials. Um, Most believed at the time it was impossible. What can you do to finally suppress this COVID-19 pandemic, the coronavirus? If we do, I hope everyone at the very least knows it was because of a miracle countrywide concerted effort and immediate behavior change, albeit probably for only a short term or only a short time, and not because anyone or any program got any such expectation incorrect. Then the force of the human will in this country can truly inspire the world. Thank you, Eric Michael Lloyd. Love you all, and stay safe, stay clean, and stay healthy. Bye bye.